Victoria sat in her home office, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across her beautiful dark skin. She had just finished reviewing the final contracts for a merger that would push her secret empire past the $20 billion mark. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, a satisfied smile playing on her lips, when a notification popped up in the corner of her screen. New email in shared account. Wedding planning services final invoice. Her heart stopped. Wedding planning? She and Alexander had been married for 8 years. Why would there be wedding planning emails in their shared account? With trembling fingers she clicked on the email. The invoice was addressed to Alexander Sterling and Emma Rodriguez. The date was set for next Saturday. The venue was the Grand Ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton, the same hotel where she and Alexander had celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary just 2 years ago. Victoria's breath caught in her throat as she scrolled through the details. Flowers, white roses and baby's breath. Catering for 150 guests. A photographer. A wedding cake with Alexander and Emma forever begins today, written in elegant script. Her hands shook as she opened their shared email folder. How had she missed this? But as she scrolled through months of correspondence, she realized the truth. Alexander had been careful. So very careful. The emails were buried between her business correspondence and his work emails. Hidden in plain sight. She found the engagement announcement first. A photo of Alexander down on one knee, proposing to a young woman with long brown hair and bright green eyes. Emma Rodriguez. Her husband's secretary. The woman who had been answering Victoria's calls for the past 3 years, always so polite, always so professional. Mrs. Sterling, Emma would say in her sweet voice, Mr. Sterling is in a meeting. Can I take a message? Victoria's stomach churned as she realized the truth. Every late night Alexander claimed to be working. Every weekend business trip. Every time he came home smelling like unfamiliar perfume and claimed it was from a client meeting. She opened another email. This one was from a real estate agent. Alexander had purchased a house. A beautiful colonial in the suburbs. The same style house Victoria had always dreamed of, but Alexander had always said they couldn't afford. The house was registered under Alexander and Emma Sterling. Emma Sterling. The woman had taken her name. Her husband's name. The name Victoria had carried with pride for 8 years. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Victoria had built her entire adult life around this man. She had supported his career, entertained his clients, played the perfect wife while secretly building her own empire. She had sacrificed her own dreams, her own identity, to be Alexander Sterling's wife. And all the while he had been building a new life with someone else. Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from Alexander, working late again tonight. Don't wait up. She stared at the message, her vision blurring with tears. How many lies had she believed? How many times had she made excuses for his absence, his distance, his growing coldness? She opened her laptop again and began searching through their shared calendar. Alexander's schedule was meticulously planned, but now she could see the pattern. Every business dinner corresponded with a romantic restaurant reservation for 2. Every weekend conference matched up with hotel bookings and romantic destinations. The most painful discovery came when she found the marriage certificate. Alexander Sterling and Emma Rodriguez had been married 6 months ago. A small ceremony in Las Vegas. While Victoria had been at home, planning their upcoming anniversary dinner, her husband had been exchanging vows with another woman. She wasn't just being cheated on. She was being replaced. Systematically, methodically, completely replaced. Victoria stood up from her desk, her legs unsteady. She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. This was the penthouse apartment she had bought with her own money, though Alexander believed it was purchased with his sales commissions. Everything in their life was built on lies. The irony wasn't lost on her. While Alexander had been sneaking around, planning his new life with Emma, Victoria had been building an empire. Her investment firm, registered under her maiden name, had grown from a small startup to a multinational corporation. Her real estate holdings spanned 3 continents. Her technology patents were worth more than most countries' GDP. Alexander had no idea. To him, she was just Victoria, the dutiful wife who managed their household and attended company parties. He had no idea that the woman he was discarding was worth more than he could earn in 1,000 lifetimes. Victoria wiped her tears and returned to her desk. She opened a new document and began typing. Not a love letter. Not a plea for reconciliation. A business plan. A plan for revenge. She had spent 8 years building her empire in secret, protecting Alexander from the truth of her success because she thought he might feel intimidated or emasculated. She had hidden her brilliance, her ambition, her incredible wealth, all to preserve his ego and their marriage. What a fool she had been. But no more. If Alexander wanted to play games, she would show him what a real game looked like. She would show him what it meant to underestimate Victoria Sterling. The wedding invitation lay open on her desk. Next Saturday. Alexander and Emma's big day. The day they would officially begin their new life together. Victoria smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who had just realized her true power. A woman who had been underestimated for far too long. She reached for her phone and dialed a number. Her lawyer answered on the first ring. Victoria? It's late. Is everything okay? No, Jonathan. Everything is not okay. But it's about to be. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She spent the dark hours methodically documenting Alexander's deception. Every email, every receipt, every lie was catalogued and saved. By morning, she had built a comprehensive timeline of his betrayal. The evidence was overwhelming. Alexander hadn't just been having an affair. He had been living a complete double life. Credit card statements showed purchases Victoria had never seen. Jewelry, expensive dinners, weekend getaways. All charged to accounts she thought were for business expenses. She found rental agreements for an apartment across town. Alexander's love nest with Emma. The lease had been active for over a year. Victoria calculated the cost. Her husband had been spending more money on his mistress than most people made in a year. Money that came from their joint accounts. Money that Victoria had contributed through her small freelance consulting business. If Alexander only knew that her consulting fees came from her own corporations, paying her to maintain the illusion of their middle-class lifestyle. Victoria's phone rang. Alexander's ringtone. She stared at the screen watching his photo flash. The same photo she had taken on their honeymoon in Italy. He looked so happy, so in love. Had it all been an act? She let it go to voicemail. Hey babe, I know I said I'd be home late, but I'm going to have to stay over at the office tonight. Big presentation tomorrow. I'll see you Thursday evening. Love you. Love you. The words felt like poison in her ears. Victoria checked her computer. Alexander's calendar showed he was supposed to be in Chicago for a conference. But his credit card had been used at a romantic restaurant downtown just 2 hours ago. She opened her laptop and accessed her security system. Her technology company had developed some of the most advanced surveillance software in the world. She had never used it to spy on her husband before, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Within minutes, she had located Alexander's phone. He was at Emma's apartment. The same apartment she had discovered in her research. He had been there since yesterday afternoon. Victoria felt sick. While she had been discovering his betrayal, he had been with Emma. Probably planning their wedding. Probably laughing about his naive wife who had no idea what was happening. She opened her email and began typing. Alexander, I found the wedding invitation. We need to talk. She hesitated before sending it. Once she sent this message, there would be no going back. Their marriage would be over. The life she had built, the identity she had created as Alexander's wife, would be finished. But then she thought about Emma taking her name. About the house Alexander had bought for his new wife. About the lies, the deception, the complete lack of respect for their marriage. She hit send. Her phone rang immediately. Alexander. Victoria? What are you talking about? What wedding invitation? His voice was calm, controlled. Even now, caught in his lies, he was trying to manipulate her. The wedding invitation addressed to you and Emma Rodriguez. For next Saturday. At the Ritz-Carlton. Silence. Long, damning silence. Victoria, I can explain. Explain what? Explain how you're married to your secretary? Explain how you've been lying to me for months? Explain how you bought a house with another woman while you're still married to me. How did you? He stopped himself. Look, this isn't how I wanted you to find out. How you wanted me to find out? Victoria's voice rose. You mean you were planning to tell me? When? After you'd been married to her for a year? 2 years. It's complicated, Victoria. You don't understand. Then help me understand, Alexander. Help me understand how you're legally married to 2 women at the same time. Another pause. I'm not married to Emma yet. The ceremony is just a formality. A commitment ceremony. A commitment ceremony that requires a marriage license? A commitment ceremony with a wedding cake that says, "Forever begins today"? Victoria could hear Emma's voice in the background. Who is that? Is that her? I have to go, Alexander said quickly. We'll talk when I get home. When will that be? Tonight? Tomorrow? Next week? I'll be home Thursday. No, you won't. Because I'm changing the locks. Victoria hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, but she felt oddly calm. The worst was over. The truth was out. Now she could begin planning her revenge. She called her lawyer again. Jonathan, I need you to file divorce papers. Today. Victoria, are you sure? Maybe you should take some time to think about this. I've had all night to think. I want him served with papers before his wedding on Saturday. His wedding? But you're married to him. Not for much longer. And Jonathan? I need you to prepare for a battle. Alexander is going to fight this. He's going to want half of everything. What assets are we talking about? Victoria smiled. More than he can possibly imagine. She spent the rest of the morning calling her team. Her business managers, her accountants, her investment advisors. People Alexander had never met, had never even heard of. The team that had helped her build her empire while he was focused on his sales job and his secretary. By noon, she had assembled a war room. Her penthouse apartment was transformed into a command center. Laptops, documents, financial records. Everything she needed to protect her assets and destroy Alexander's life. Her assistant, Rebecca, arrived with coffee and pastries. Mrs. Sterling, I've prepared the files you requested. Your investment portfolio, real estate holdings, and patent royalties. Everything is documented and ready for your legal team. Thank you, Rebecca. And please call me Victoria. I don't think I'll be Mrs. Sterling much longer. Rebecca smiled. Of course, Victoria. And if I may say so, you're handling this with incredible strength. Victoria looked out at the city below. I've been preparing for this my whole life. I just didn't know it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. Victoria, please don't do anything rash. We can work this out. She deleted the message without responding. There was nothing to work out. Alexander had made his choice. Now she would make hers. The revenge she had planned would be swift, complete, and devastating. Alexander thought he was leaving her for a better life. Instead, he was about to discover that he was leaving the best thing that had ever happened to him. And by the time he realized his mistake, it would be far too late. Victoria stood in her private office building, a sleek 30-story tower in the heart of the financial district. Alexander had driven past this building thousands of times, never knowing that his wife owned it. Never knowing that the woman he dismissed as just a housewife was the CEO of one of the most successful investment firms in the country. She had built her empire carefully, methodically, over the course of 8 years. Every decision had been calculated to avoid Alexander's attention. Every success had been hidden behind shell companies and trust funds. Every brilliant move had been attributed to male business partners who existed only on paper. Victoria, the board is ready for you, Rebecca announced from the doorway. Victoria straightened her shoulders and walked into the conference room. 12 of the most powerful investors in the country sat around the polished table. They knew her as Victoria Chin, the mysterious CEO who had turned a small investment firm into a global powerhouse. They had no idea she was Victoria Sterling, the housewife who attended company picnics and charity events with her husband. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria began, I've called this emergency meeting because I'm about to make some major changes in my personal life. Changes that will affect how I manage my public profile. She clicked a remote, and the wall screen displayed her portfolio. $23 billion in assets. Real estate holdings in 15 countries. Technology patents that powered half the world's smartphones. Investment stakes in everything from renewable energy to space exploration. For the past 8 years, I've maintained complete anonymity. I've hidden behind shell companies and proxy investors. I've let the world believe that other people were responsible for our success. She clicked to the next slide. That ends today. The room was silent. These were people who understood power, who recognized genius when they saw it. They had always known Victoria was brilliant, but they had never questioned why she chose to remain in the shadows. I'm going through a divorce, Victoria continued. My husband has been living a double life. He's been married to another woman for 6 months while still married to me. His wedding to his second wife is scheduled for this Saturday. She could see the shock on their faces. Not at the divorce, but at the revelation that someone had been foolish enough to betray Victoria Chin. My husband believes I'm a housewife with a small consulting business. He has no idea about my real wealth or my real identity. He's demanding half of what he thinks are our joint assets. Victoria smiled and several board members smiled back. They understood what was coming. I want to go public. I want the world to know who Victoria Chin really is. I want my husband to understand exactly what he's throwing away. The room erupted in agreement. Victoria had always been cautious, always private. But her board had been pushing her to step into the spotlight for years. Her success story was inspiring. Her business acumen was legendary. She deserved recognition. "There's more," Victoria continued. "I've been investigating my husband's activities. He's been embezzling from his company. Small amounts but consistent. He's been using company credit cards for personal expenses. He's been falsifying his sales reports." She displayed copies of Alexander's financial records. "He's been stealing to fund his double life. The apartment he rents for his mistress. The expensive gifts. The romantic vacations. All paid for with stolen money." The board members leaned forward, studying the evidence. These were people who understood financial crime, who knew how to destroy someone's career and reputation. "I want to expose him," Victoria said. "I want his company to know what he's been doing. I want his mistress to know that she's been living off stolen money. I want the world to know that Alexander Sterling is a fraud." She clicked to the final slide. "But first I want to show him what he's losing." The screen displayed Victoria's personal residence. Not the penthouse apartment where she lived with Alexander, but her real home. A sprawling estate in the mountains worth $50 million. A place Alexander had never seen, had never even imagined. "I've been living a lie for 8 years, Victoria said. "I've been pretending to be someone I'm not, hiding my success, diminishing my achievements. All to protect a marriage that was built on deception." She turned to face the board. "I'm done hiding. I'm done protecting a man who doesn't deserve my protection. I'm done being Victoria Sterling, the perfect wife. It's time for the world to meet Victoria Chin, the billionaire." The applause was thunderous. Victoria had always been respected, but now she was revered. Her story was every successful woman's fantasy, the moment when the world realizes who they really are. After the meeting, Victoria returned to her office. She had calls to make, plans to execute, an empire to reveal. But first, she wanted to sit in her real space, surrounded by the evidence of her success. She had built all of this while Alexander thought she was home watching television. She had negotiated billion-dollar deals while he was at work selling insurance. She had created jobs for thousands of people while he was focused on his quarterly sales targets. The irony was overwhelming. Alexander had always made jokes about her little consulting business. He had patted her on the head and told her it was cute that she wanted to work. He had never asked about her clients, her projects, her income. He had assumed she was making a few $100s a month and felt proud of himself for being so supportive. If he had shown even the slightest interest in her work, he would have discovered the truth. But Alexander had never been interested in Victoria's thoughts, her dreams, her ambitions. He had married her because she was beautiful and supportive, not because he respected her mind. That lack of respect had allowed her to build an empire right under his nose. Every time he dismissed her, every time he ignored her, every time he made her feel small, she had channeled that energy into her business. Her success was built on his neglect. Victoria opened her laptop and began typing a press release. It was time to introduce Victoria Chin to the world. Time to show everyone what happened when you underestimated a brilliant woman. Time to show Alexander that the woman he was discarding was worth more than he could ever imagine. The wedding was in 3 days. By then, Alexander would know the truth. By then, he would understand the magnitude of his mistake. But it would be too late. Victoria Chin had been hidden for 8 years. Now she was ready to shine. Alexander arrived at the penthouse Thursday evening, his key no longer working in the lock. He rang the doorbell, his face flushed with anger and confusion. Victoria watched him through the security camera, noting how different he looked. Older, tired, guilty. She opened the door and for a moment they stared at each other. 8 years of marriage and Victoria felt like she was looking at a stranger. "Victoria, what the hell is going on? Why did you change the locks? Come in, Alexander. We need to talk." He followed her into the living room, his eyes darting around the penthouse as if seeing it for the first time. "This place is incredible. How did we afford all this?" Victoria almost laughed. Even now, even after being caught in his lies, Alexander was more interested in their possessions than in addressing his betrayal. "Sit down, Alexander." He sat on the couch, the same couch where they had celebrated their anniversary just 6 months ago. Where they had made love, where they had planned their future, where Victoria had believed they were happy. "Before we talk about your wedding," Victoria said, "I want to show you something." She handed him a tablet. On the screen was a financial statement. Alexander's eyes widened as he read the numbers. "This is impossible. This says we're worth over $20 billion. Not we, Alexander. Me. He looked up at her, confusion replacing anger. What are you talking about? I'm talking about Victoria Chin Investments. I'm talking about Chin Holdings. I'm talking about the technology patents registered under Chin Industries. I'm talking about the real estate portfolio owned by Chin Properties. Alexander's face went pale. Chin? That's your maiden name. Yes, it is. The name I've been using for my business empire. The empire you know nothing about. Victoria sat down across from him, her posture perfect, her voice calm. For 8 years, Alexander, I've been building a business empire. While you were selling insurance, I was buying companies. While you were worried about your monthly quotas, I was managing billion-dollar investments. While you were having affairs, I was creating jobs for thousands of people. That's impossible. You're a housewife. You have a small consulting business. I let you believe that because I thought it would protect our marriage. I thought if you knew how successful I really was, you might feel intimidated. I thought you might feel less masculine. I thought you might leave me. Victoria smiled bitterly. Turns out you left me anyway. Alexander stood up, pacing the room. This is insane. You're telling me that you're some kind of secret billionaire? That you've been lying to me for our entire marriage? I've been protecting you, Alexander. Protecting your ego. Protecting your feelings. Making myself smaller so you could feel bigger. Show me proof. Show me real proof. Victoria handed him another tablet. This one showed news articles about Victoria Chin, the mysterious CEO who had revolutionized the investment industry. Photos of her at business conferences, always carefully angled to hide her face. Articles about her charitable donations, her innovative business strategies, her incredible success. This is you? Alexander whispered. This is me. The real me. The me you never bothered to get to know. Alexander sank back onto the couch. Why didn't you tell me? Because every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I mentioned a business idea, you patted me on the head and told me it was cute. Every time I achieved something, you made it about yourself. Victoria stood up, her voice growing stronger. Do you remember when I won that innovation award 3 years ago? The one I said was for small business owners? Alexander nodded vaguely. It was the Forbes Entrepreneur of the Year award. I was recognized as one of the most successful business leaders in the country. And when I tried to tell you about it, you said you were proud of me for winning a little local award, and then spent the rest of the evening talking about your own sales achievements. The truth was hitting Alexander like a physical blow. Victoria could see him processing the implications, calculating what this meant for their divorce. So when we get divorced, he said slowly, I'm entitled to half of this? Victoria's expression hardened. No, Alexander. You're not. What do you mean? We're married. Community property. I'm entitled to half of everything. You're entitled to half of our marital assets. The penthouse apartment we live in. The car you drive. The joint bank accounts. The assets we accumulated together as a married couple. Alexander's eyes lit up. This penthouse must be worth millions. And you said we're worth 20 billion. I said I'm worth 20 billion. And this penthouse is mine. I bought it with my own money before we were married. It's not a marital asset. Victoria opened her laptop and showed him the deed. Purchased by Victoria Chin, 3 months before our wedding. Like most of my assets, it's held in trusts and corporations established before our marriage. Alexander's face went through a series of emotions. Confusion. Realization. Panic. That's not possible. You didn't have any money when we got married. You were working as a receptionist. I was working as a receptionist while building my investment portfolio. I was living in a small apartment while buying real estate. I was driving an old car while purchasing technology patents. Victoria pulled up more documents. Every major asset I own was acquired through my premarital businesses or purchased with funds from those businesses. According to the prenuptial agreement you signed, you have no claim to any of it. Prenuptial agreement? We never signed a prenuptial agreement. Victoria handed him a folder. Page 15 of our marriage license application. You signed it without reading it. I told you it was standard paperwork. Alexander opened the folder, his hands shaking. The prenuptial agreement was comprehensive, protecting all of Victoria's premarital assets and any income derived from those assets. It was ironclad. You tricked me, he whispered. I protected myself. Just like you've been protecting yourself by stealing from your company to fund your double life. Alexander's head snapped up. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the money you've been embezzling. The falsified expense reports. The company credit cards used for personal expenses. The sales figures you've been inflating. Victoria displayed the evidence on her laptop screen. It's all here, Alexander. Every theft, every lie, every crime. I've been documenting it all. How did you? I own a technology company, Alexander. I have access to resources you can't imagine. I can trace every transaction, every lie, every deception. Alexander slumped in his chair. What do you want? I want you to understand what you're throwing away. I want you to realize that you're leaving a woman who loved you enough to hide her success to protect your feelings. I want you to know that you're choosing a secretary over a billionaire. Victoria leaned forward. But mostly, I want you to understand that your actions have consequences. You've committed crimes, Alexander. You've stolen money. You've committed fraud. And now you're going to pay for it. You wouldn't? I already have. I've sent all the evidence to your company's board of directors. They should be receiving it tomorrow morning, right about the time you're supposed to be getting married. Alexander stood up, desperation replacing arrogance. Victoria, please. We can work this out. We can start over. No, we can't. You made your choice. You chose Emma. You chose lies over truth. You chose theft over honesty. You chose to throw away the best thing that ever happened to you. Victoria walked to the door. Your wedding is in 2 days, Alexander. I suggest you enjoy it, because it's going to be the last good day you have for a very long time. As Alexander left the penthouse, Victoria felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For 8 years she had carried the burden of her secret. Now Alexander knew the truth. Soon the whole world would know. The real Victoria Chen was about to step into the light. Friday morning arrived with a storm of legal documents. Alexander's company board had received Victoria's evidence package at 8 a.m. sharp. By 10 a.m. he was being escorted from the building by security, his access cards confiscated, his office locked down. Victoria watched the news coverage from her office tower. The local business channel was reporting on a major embezzlement scandal at Sterling Insurance. Alexander's photo appeared on screen, identified as the primary suspect in what prosecutors were calling a systematic fraud scheme. The accused employee allegedly embezzled over $500,000 over the course of 2 years, the news anchor reported. The evidence suggests a pattern of falsified expense reports, unauthorized credit card usage, and manipulated sales figures. Victoria's phone rang. Jonathan, her lawyer. The divorce papers have been served, he said. Alexander received them at the police station where he was being questioned about the embezzlement charges. And his reaction? His lawyer called me within an hour. They want to negotiate. Victoria smiled. I bet they do. She had spent the morning preparing for this moment. Her legal team had assembled a war room in the conference center of her building. 12 lawyers, all specialists in different areas of law. Corporate law, criminal law, family law, international law. She had spared no expense in building the most formidable legal team money could buy. Mrs. Chin, her head lawyer, Sarah Martinez, addressed her. Alexander's legal team is claiming that regardless of the prenuptial agreement, you committed fraud by concealing your assets during the marriage. They're arguing that the marriage was built on deception. Victoria laughed. The marriage was built on deception. His deception. He was married to another woman while married to me. That's our counter-argument. We have evidence of his bigamy, his embezzlement, and his systematic fraud. We also have evidence that you made repeated attempts to discuss your business interests with him, which he consistently dismissed. Sarah handed Victoria a thick folder. We've documented every instance where you tried to share your success with Alexander. Every time you mentioned a business deal, every time you suggested investing in something, every time you offered to contribute more to household expenses. His responses are on record. Victoria opened the folder, remembering each painful interaction. The time she had suggested they invest in a promising startup, and Alexander had laughed and told her to leave the financial decisions to him. The time she had offered to pay for a larger house, and he had insisted that a man should provide for his family. The time she had tried to explain her work, and he had interrupted to talk about his own day. We also have evidence of his financial crimes, Sarah continued. The embezzlement charges are serious. He could face up to 10 years in prison. Victoria felt a moment of something that might have been pity. But then she remembered Emma, the second wife, the lies, the complete betrayal of everything she had believed about their marriage. What about the bigamy charges? That's more complicated. Technically, he's not legally married to Emma yet. The ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow, but they don't have a valid marriage license because he's still married to you. Victoria's eyes lit up. So if the wedding proceeds, he'll be committing fraud? Exactly. If he goes through with the ceremony, he'll be guilty of marriage fraud. If he doesn't, he'll have to explain to Emma and all their guests why the wedding is cancelled. Either way, he's finished. Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Please call me. This is Emma. We need to talk. Victoria showed the message to Sarah. What do you think? I think Emma is about to discover that her fairy tale is a nightmare. Victoria dialed the number. Emma answered on the first ring. Mrs. Sterling? This is Emma Rodriguez. I think we need to talk. Victoria was surprised by Emma's voice. She sounded young, scared, and completely out of her depth. What do you want to talk about, Emma? I just found out about the embezzlement charges. I had no idea. Alexander told me he was divorced. He told me you were just his ex-wife who was trying to cause trouble. Victoria felt a stab of sympathy despite herself. Emma, Alexander is still married to me. He's been lying to both of us. I know that now. The police came to my apartment this morning. They told me about the bigamy investigation. They said if I go through with the wedding tomorrow, I could be charged as an accessory to fraud. Victoria closed her eyes. Emma was just another victim of Alexander's lies. A young woman who had believed in a future that was built on deception. Emma, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. I love him, Emma whispered. I thought we were going to have a beautiful life together. I thought he was going to take care of me. He can't take care of you if he's in prison. The police said he could get 10 years. They said all the money he spent on me was stolen. The apartment, the jewelry, the vacations. Everything. Victoria could hear Emma crying. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, despite the pain, she felt sorry for this young woman who had been deceived just as thoroughly as she had been. Emma, you have choices. You can walk away from this. You can start over. I don't know how. I quit my job to plan the wedding. I spent all my savings on the dress, the flowers, the deposits. I don't have anywhere to go. Victoria made a decision that surprised even her. Emma, I'm going to help you. What? I'm going to help you get a job. A real job with a real company where you can build a real future. You're young, you're smart, you deserve better than this. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Why would you help me? Because we're both victims of Alexander's lies. Because I know what it's like to be deceived by someone you trust. Because I believe in giving people second chances. I don't understand. Aren't you angry at me? Victoria considered the question. I'm angry at Alexander. You were just another person he manipulated. What about the wedding? What do I tell everyone? You tell them the truth. That you discovered the man you were going to marry was a fraud. That you're brave enough to walk away from a lie. Victoria ended the call and turned to her legal team. I want to add something to our strategy. I want to help Emma Rodriguez. I want to make sure she's protected from any criminal charges, and I want to help her find employment. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's very generous, considering the circumstances. Emma is a victim, not a criminal. Alexander manipulated her just like he manipulated me. The difference is, I had the resources to protect myself. She doesn't. Victoria stood up, her decision made. I want Alexander to face the consequences of his actions. But I don't want innocent people to suffer because of his choices. Her phone rang again. This time it was Alexander. Victoria, please. You have to stop this. The police are saying I could go to prison. You should have thought about that before you started stealing. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just trying to make Emma happy. I was trying to give her the life she deserved. The life she deserved? Built on stolen money? Built on lies. I love her, Victoria. I really love her. Victoria felt the words like a physical blow. Even now, even after everything, it hurt to hear him say he loved someone else. If you love her, Alexander, then you'll let her go. You'll let her build a life that isn't tainted by your crimes. What about us? What about our marriage? Our marriage ended the moment you said, I do, to someone else. Even if it wasn't legal, even if it was just a ceremony, you made your choice. Victoria hung up and turned back to her legal team. I want this finished quickly. I want Alexander to face justice, but I want to move on with my life. Sarah nodded. We'll have the divorce finalized within 30 days. With the evidence we have, there won't be any delays. And the criminal charges? The prosecutor is confident. Alexander will likely plead guilty to avoid a trial. He's looking at significant prison time. Victoria felt a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction at seeing justice served. Sadness for the end of her marriage. Relief that the truth was finally out. And surprisingly, a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. There's one more thing, Sarah said. The media has gotten wind of the story. They're calling it the billionaire wife revenge. They want to interview you. Victoria smiled. Set it up. It's time for the world to meet the real Victoria Chin. Saturday morning, the day that should have been Alexander's wedding, Victoria sat in the makeup chair at the television studio. She had agreed to an exclusive interview with the city's most popular morning show. The host, Margaret Williams, was known for her tough questions and her ability to get to the heart of any story. Are you ready for this? Margaret asked as they prepared to go live. This is going to be a big story. Victoria nodded. I've been ready for 8 years. The cameras rolled and Margaret began her introduction. Good morning, I'm Margaret Williams. Today we have an exclusive interview with Victoria Chin, the billionaire CEO who shocked the business world this week when she revealed that she's been living a double life. Victoria, thank you for joining us. Victoria smiled confidently. Thank you for having me, Margaret. Let's start with the basic facts. You're worth over $20 billion, you run a global investment empire, and until this week your husband had no idea about any of it. How is that possible? I made a choice early in my marriage to keep my business life separate from my personal life. I thought I was protecting my husband's feelings. I thought if he knew how successful I was, he might feel intimidated or emasculated. Margaret leaned forward. But your husband has been charged with embezzlement. He's been accused of stealing money from his company. Did you know about this? I discovered it during my investigation into his double life. When I found out he was planning to marry another woman, I began looking into his finances. That's when I discovered the embezzlement. His double life? Victoria took a breath. My husband has been having an affair with his secretary. They were planning to get married today while he was still married to me. He's been living 2 separate lives, lying to both of us. That must have been devastating to discover. It was. But it also made me realize that I had been living a lie too. I had been hiding who I really was, diminishing my achievements, making myself smaller to protect a marriage that was built on deception. Margaret showed a graphic displaying Victoria's business empire. Let's talk about your success. You've built this empire over 8 years, all while your husband thought you were just a housewife with a small consulting business. That's correct. Every day, Alexander would go to work selling insurance, and I would go to work managing billion-dollar investments. He would come home worried about his monthly sales targets, and I would come home from closing deals worth more than his company's annual revenue. Why didn't you tell him the truth? Victoria's expression grew sad. I tried. Many times. But every time I attempted to share my success with him, he would dismiss it or change the subject. He wasn't interested in my work, my ideas or my achievements. He saw me as a supportive wife, not as a business partner or equal. Margaret pulled up quotes from Alexander's co-workers. We've spoken to several of Alexander's former colleagues. They say he often bragged about how he was the breadwinner in your family. He told people that you were just a housewife who liked to play with computers. Victoria's jaw tightened. That's exactly the kind of dismissive attitude that made me decide to keep my success private. Every achievement was minimized, every idea was dismissed, every attempt to contribute was treated as cute but irrelevant. But the irony is incredible. While he was bragging about being the breadwinner, you were actually supporting the lifestyle you shared. Every expensive dinner, every vacation, every luxury in our home was paid for with money from my businesses. Alexander thought his insurance commissions were funding our life. In reality, his annual salary was less than what I make in a single day. Margaret showed photos of Victoria's real estate holdings. These are some of your properties. A $50 million estate in Colorado, a penthouse in New York, a villa in Italy. Your husband never knew about any of these? He knew about the penthouse where we lived, but he thought it was rented. He had no idea I owned it, along with the rest of the building. He never knew about my other properties because he never showed interest in our finances. He assumed I was handling the household budget while he focused on important business matters. Let's talk about the revenge aspect of this story. When you discovered his betrayal, you exposed his crimes and destroyed his life. Some people might say that's harsh. Victoria's eyes flashed. Alexander made his own choices. He chose to steal money from his company. He chose to lie to me and to Emma. He chose to commit fraud. I simply brought the truth to light. But you could have handled this privately. You could have divorced him quietly. Instead, you've made this a public spectacle. I spent 8 years hiding my success to protect Alexander's ego. I spent 8 years making myself smaller to make him feel bigger. I spent 8 years living a lie to preserve a marriage that he was destroying with his own lies. Victoria leaned forward, her voice growing stronger. I'm done hiding. I'm done protecting men who don't deserve protection. I'm done letting people underestimate me because it makes them more comfortable. Margaret smiled. And what's next for Victoria Chin? I'm going to continue building my empire. I'm going to create jobs, invest in innovations and change the world. I'm going to do it all as myself, without hiding, without apologizing, without making myself smaller for anyone. Any regrets? Victoria considered the question. I regret that I wasted 8 years hiding my true self. I regret that I let Alexander's insecurities dictate how I lived my life. I regret that I didn't have the courage to be myself sooner. And what about Alexander? Any message for your soon-to-be ex-husband? Victoria looked directly into the camera. Alexander, you had the love of a woman who was willing to hide her success to protect your feelings. You had a partner who was building an empire while supporting your dreams. You had everything and you threw it away for lies and theft and betrayal. Her voice grew cold. I hope it was worth it. As the interview ended, Victoria felt a tremendous sense of relief. The truth was out. The world knew who she really was. She would never again have to hide her success or diminish her achievements. Her phone was already buzzing with interview requests, business opportunities and speaking engagements. The world wanted to know more about the billionaire who had been hiding in plain sight. But first she had one more person to deal with. Alexander was about to learn that his problems were just beginning. Alexander sat in his lawyer's office, staring at the television screen as Victoria's interview played. With each word she spoke, his face grew paler, his hands shook more violently, and his breathing became more labored. Turn it off, he whispered. Alexander, we need to discuss your options, his lawyer, David Park, said grimly. The prosecutor is offering a plea deal. 3 years in prison, full restitution, and a lifetime ban from the financial services industry. 3 years. Alexander's voice cracked. I can't go to prison for 3 years. It's better than the 10 years you'll get if this goes to trial. Victoria's evidence is overwhelming. She has documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every falsified report, every theft. Alexander buried his head in his hands. How did she get all of this? How did she know? She owns a technology company, Alexander. She has resources you can't even imagine. She's been watching you, documenting everything, building a case against you. She set me up. She trapped me. David shook his head. She didn't set you up. You committed the crimes. She just documented them. Alexander's phone rang. Emma. He had been avoiding her calls all morning. I have to take this, he said, stepping into the hallway. Alexander? Emma's voice was small, frightened. I just watched the interview. Is it true? Are you really married to a billionaire? Emma, I can explain. Are you really going to prison? Alexander closed his eyes. Probably. I can't do this, Alexander. I can't marry someone who's going to prison. I can't build a life with someone who's been lying to me about everything. Emma, please. I love you. We can work through this. Work through what? The fact that you're still married? The fact that you're a criminal? The fact that everything you've given me was bought with stolen money? I did it for you. I did it for us. You did it for yourself. You wanted to be the big shot, the successful businessman, the man who could provide for his woman. But it was all fake, wasn't it? Alexander could hear Emma crying. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I have to go, Alexander. I have to pack. I'm moving back in with my parents. Emma, wait. The line went dead. Alexander stared at his phone, realizing that he had lost everything. His wife, his mistress, his job, his freedom, his future. He returned to the lawyer's office, where David was reviewing more documents. There's something else, David said. Victoria's legal team has filed a civil suit against you. They're seeking full restitution for all marital assets you've wasted on your affair. What does that mean? It means they want you to pay back every penny you spent on Emma. The apartment, the jewelry, the vacations, the wedding expenses. They're calculating it at over $300,000. Alexander felt dizzy. I don't have $300,000. They know that. They're going to seize your assets. Your car, your personal belongings, your bank accounts. They're going to garnish your wages for the rest of your life. What wages? I don't have a job. Exactly. You're going to be financially ruined for the rest of your life. Alexander's phone buzzed with a text from his landlord. Saw the news. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. Then another text from his credit card company. Your account has been suspended due to suspected fraudulent activity. Then another from his bank. Your accounts have been frozen pending investigation. Within an hour, Alexander had lost his job, his home, his fiancée, and his access to money. He was about to lose his freedom. "What am I going to do?" he asked David. "You're going to take the plea deal. You're going to serve your time. You're going to pay back every penny you stole. And you're going to hope that when you get out of prison, you can find some way to rebuild your life." "What about Victoria? What about our marriage?" "Your marriage is over, Alexander. Victoria is filing for divorce on grounds of fraud, adultery, and criminal conduct. She's not asking for anything from you because there's nothing to take. You have no assets, no income, no prospects." Alexander realized the cruel irony of his situation. He had left the richest woman in the world for a secretary. He had thrown away a fortune for a fantasy. He had destroyed his life for a lie. "Can I see her? Can I talk to her?" "She's made it clear that she has no interest in speaking with you. Her lawyers have advised her to have no contact with you until after the divorce is finalized." Alexander slumped in his chair. "I need to see Emma. I need to explain. Emma has retained her own lawyer. She's been advised not to speak with you. She's trying to distance herself from your crimes. So I'm alone. You're alone because of choices you made. You chose to steal. You chose to lie. You chose to betray the people who loved you." Alexander left the lawyer's office and walked to his car, only to find it being repossessed. He stood on the sidewalk watching his BMW being loaded onto a tow truck, realizing that he had nothing left. His phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. "Is this Alexander Sterling?" "Yes. This is Channel 7 News. We're doing a story about your case. Would you like to comment on your wife's accusations?" Alexander hung up. Then his phone rang again. Another reporter. Then another. He turned off his phone and started walking. He had nowhere to go, no money for a hotel, no friends who would take him in. His family lived across the country and he was too ashamed to call them. As he walked through the city, Alexander passed his office building. The building where he had worked for 10 years, where he had built his career, where he had met Emma. Security guards were posted at the entrance, with his photo displayed as someone who was banned from the premises. He kept walking, past the restaurant where he had proposed to Emma, past the hotel where they had planned their wedding reception, past the jewelry store where he had bought her ring with stolen money. Everything in his life had been built on lies and theft. Now that the truth was out, everything was crumbling. Alexander found himself standing outside Victoria's office building. The 30-story tower that he had driven past thousands of times, never knowing that his wife owned it. The building that represented everything he had never understood about the woman he had married. He looked up at the top floor where Victoria's office was located. The woman who had loved him enough to hide her success was up there, building her empire, planning her future, moving on with her life. And he was down here, homeless, broke, and alone, facing prison and a lifetime of regret. Alexander Sterling had lost everything. And it was entirely his own fault. 3 weeks later, Alexander sat in the lobby of Victoria's office building, waiting. He had been there for 4 hours, but he wasn't leaving until he got to see her. The security guards had refused to let him upstairs, but they couldn't make him leave the public lobby. He looked terrible. His clothes were wrinkled and dirty. He hadn't shaved in days. He was staying at a cheap motel, paying by the day with the little money he had left from returning Emma's engagement ring. His arraignment was scheduled for tomorrow. David had negotiated the plea deal: 3 years in prison, full restitution, and a lifetime ban from financial services. Alexander would be a convicted felon, unemployable, and financially ruined for the rest of his life. But first he had to see Victoria. He had to try to make her understand. He had to try to win her back. Finally, at 6 p.m. he saw her. Victoria emerged from the elevator, looking stunning in a designer suit, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She was everything he had lost, everything he had thrown away. "Victoria," he called out, standing up quickly. She turned, and for a moment their eyes met. Alexander saw something in her expression, not anger, not hatred, but something worse. Indifference. "Alexander." Her voice was calm, professional. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you. Please. Just 5 minutes." Victoria looked around the lobby, noting the security guards who were watching the interaction carefully. 5 minutes? In the conference room. She led him to a small conference room off the lobby. Alexander noticed that she left the door open, probably for security reasons. "You look," he started. "I look like myself," Victoria interrupted. "For the first time in years, I look like myself." Alexander sat down heavily. "Victoria, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I know that now." "You made many mistakes, Alexander. Which one are you referring to? All of them. Emma, the stealing, the lying. All of it. I was stupid, I was selfish, I was wrong. Victoria sat across from him, her posture perfect, her expression neutral. Yes, you were. I want to make it right. I want to come home. I want to be your husband again. Victoria almost smiled. Alexander, you're going to prison tomorrow. You're going to be a convicted felon. You have no money, no job, no prospects. What exactly are you offering me? I'm offering you my love. I'm offering you my commitment. I'm offering you a chance to save our marriage. Save our marriage? Victoria's voice grew cold. Alexander, you killed our marriage when you decided to marry someone else. You buried it when you started stealing. You destroyed it when you lied to me for months. I was confused. I was having a midlife crisis. I didn't know what I was doing. You knew exactly what you were doing. You made calculated decisions. You opened secret bank accounts. You rented an apartment for your mistress. You bought her jewelry with stolen money. You planned a wedding while you were still married to me. Alexander leaned forward desperately. But I love you, Victoria. I've always loved you. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. You loved having a beautiful wife who made you look successful. You loved having someone who supported your career and didn't challenge your ego. That's not true. Alexander, in 8 years of marriage, you never once asked me about my dreams, my goals, my ambitions. You never asked me what I wanted to do with my life. You never showed interest in my work or my ideas. Victoria stood up, pacing the small room. You married me because I was pretty and supportive. You stayed married to me because I was convenient. You never bothered to get to know who I really was. I want to know now. I want to learn about your business, your empire, your success. It's too late for that. It's never too late. We can start over. We can build something new. Victoria sat back down and looked at Alexander with something that might have been pity. Alexander, I built a $20 billion empire while you thought I was watching television. I negotiated deals that changed entire industries while you were worried about your sales quotas. I created jobs for thousands of people while you were focused on your own small world. I know that now. I'm proud of you. I don't need your pride. I don't need your approval. I don't need your permission to be successful. Alexander felt tears welling up in his eyes. What do you need? Tell me what you need and I'll give it to you. I need you to sign the divorce papers. I need you to accept responsibility for your crimes. I need you to serve your time and stay out of my life. I can't do that. I can't give up on us. Victoria opened her purse and pulled out a folder. Alexander, I want to show you something. She opened the folder and spread out photographs. Pictures of the life Alexander had thrown away. Victoria's estate in Colorado, her penthouse in New York, her villa in Italy. Pictures of her meeting with world leaders, signing deals with Fortune 500 companies, accepting awards from international organizations. This is my life, Alexander. This is who I really am. This is what you never bothered to discover. Alexander stared at the photographs, realizing the magnitude of what he had lost. I could be part of this. I could support you, help you, be your partner. You had 8 years to be my partner. You chose to be my burden instead. Victoria pulled out more photographs. These were from the past 3 weeks. Victoria at business conferences, Victoria being interviewed on television, Victoria meeting with potential investors. I've been busier in the past 3 weeks than I've been in years. I've been myself, completely and authentically myself, for the first time since we got married. You're happier without me. I'm happier being myself. I'm happier not hiding my success. I'm happier not pretending to be someone I'm not. Alexander realized the truth. Victoria didn't need him. She had never needed him. She had been supporting him financially and emotionally for their entire marriage. I'm going to prison tomorrow, he said quietly. I know. I'm going to lose everything. You already have. I'm going to be alone. Victoria stood up. That's your choice, Alexander. You chose Emma over me. You chose crime over honesty. You chose lies over truth. You chose to destroy our marriage rather than be the husband I deserved. She walked to the door. Your 5 minutes are up. Victoria, please. I'm begging you. Give me another chance. She turned back to him and for the first time Alexander saw emotion in her eyes. Not love, not forgiveness, but something deeper. Disappointment. I gave you 8 years of chances, Alexander. 8 years to see me, to know me, to love me for who I really am. You never took any of them. I was blind. I was stupid. You were exactly who you chose to be. And now you have to live with the consequences. Victoria left the conference room, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Alexander sat alone, realizing that he had lost the only thing that had ever really mattered. Tomorrow he would go to prison. In 3 years he would be released to a world where he was unemployable, financially ruined, and completely alone. And Victoria would continue building her empire, creating her legacy, living her authentic life. Without him. 6 months later, Alexander sat in his prison cell, writing his third letter to Victoria. The first 2 had been returned unopened. He knew this one would be too, but he had to try. Dear Victoria, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I had to write this. I've had 6 months to think about what I did, what I lost, what I threw away. I understand now how wrong I was. I've been reading about your business empire. The newspapers here are full of stories about Victoria Chin, the brilliant CEO who's changing the world. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, even though I know I have no right to be. I dream about you every night. I dream about the life we could have had if I hadn't been so blind, so stupid, so selfish. I dream about supporting your success instead of ignoring it. I dream about being the husband you deserved. When I get out of here, I want to show you that I've changed. I want to prove that I can be better. I want to earn your forgiveness, your trust, your love. Please don't give up on us. Please don't give up on me. I love you. Alexander. He sealed the letter and handed it to the guard, knowing it would be returned like all the others. Victoria had made it clear that she wanted no contact with him. In the prison library, Alexander had access to newspapers and internet. He followed Victoria's success obsessively. Her company had grown even larger. She had been named CEO of the Year by 3 different magazines. She had been featured on the cover of Forbes, Time, and Newsweek. She was living her authentic life and she was thriving. Alexander had also seen the photos of Victoria with other men. Business dinners, charity galas, social events. She wasn't dating anyone seriously, but she was clearly moving on with her life. Sterling. The guard called. You have a visitor. Alexander's heart leaped. Victoria? Had she finally decided to see him? But when he got to the visitor's room, he saw David Park, his lawyer. David? What are you doing here? I have news. Victoria's legal team has made a final offer. Alexander sat down, hope flooding through him. She wants to negotiate? She wants to end this cleanly. She's willing to forgive the civil damages you owe her, the $300,000 you spent on Emma, if you agree to certain conditions. What conditions? David opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. You have to sign a no-contact agreement. No letters, no phone calls, no attempts to see her. You have to agree to stay out of her life permanently. Alexander's face fell. She's buying me off? She's trying to close this chapter of her life. She doesn't want to spend the next 20 years dealing with collection efforts or harassment. I'm not harassing her. I'm trying to save our marriage. Alexander, your marriage is over. It's been over for 6 months. Victoria has moved on. She's building a new life and you're not part of it. I could be part of it. When I get out of here, I could show her that I've changed. David shook his head. She doesn't want you to change for her. She wants you to leave her alone. I can't do that. I love her. You love the idea of her. You love the fantasy of being married to a billionaire. You love the idea of the life you could have had. That's not true. Alexander, when you were married to her, you didn't love her enough to be faithful. You didn't love her enough to be honest. You didn't love her enough to see who she really was. David leaned forward. You're in love with your regret, not with Victoria. Alexander stared at the document. What happens if I don't sign? She'll pursue the civil case. She'll garnish your wages for the rest of your life. She'll make sure you never forget what you owe her. And if I sign? She forgives the debt. You get a fresh start when you're released. You can rebuild your life without the financial burden. Alexander picked up the pen, then put it down. I need to think about this. There's nothing to think about. This is the best deal you're going to get. Victoria is being generous. She doesn't have to offer you anything. Why is she being generous? Because she wants to move on. Because she doesn't want to waste any more of her life dealing with you. The words hit Alexander like a physical blow. She really hates me. She doesn't hate you. She's indifferent to you. She's moved past you. You're just a problem she wants to solve so she can focus on her real life. Alexander realized the truth. Victoria wasn't trying to hurt him. She wasn't trying to punish him. She was trying to forget him. There's something else, David said. Victoria is engaged. Alexander's world stopped. What? She's engaged to Marcus Thompson, the CEO of Thompson Industries. He's been courting her for months. The wedding is planned for next year. Alexander felt like he couldn't breathe. She's marrying someone else? She's marrying someone who sees her for who she really is. Someone who appreciates her intelligence, her ambition, her success. Someone who wants to be her partner, not her burden. I could have been that person. You had 8 years to be that person. You chose not to be. David pushed the document across the table. Sign it, Alexander. Let her go. Let her be happy. Alexander picked up the pen, his hand shaking. What kind of man is he? He's everything you weren't. He's honest, he's supportive, he's proud of her success. He's been building his own empire while supporting hers. They're equals. Does she love him? She lights up when she talks about him. She's happy in a way she never was with you. Alexander signed the document, feeling like he was signing his own death warrant. There. It's done. It's done. Victoria will be relieved. She can finally close this chapter of her life. David stood up to leave. Alexander, I'm going to give you some advice. When you get out of prison, don't try to contact her. Don't try to see her. Don't follow her career or her life. Move on. Build a new life for yourself. How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to forget the best thing that ever happened to me? By remembering that you're the one who threw it away. By remembering that she's better off without you. By remembering that real love means wanting the other person to be happy, even if it's not with you. Alexander returned to his cell, the signed document feeling like a weight on his chest. He had officially given up any claim to Victoria's life, her love, her future. She was engaged to another man. She was building a life with someone who deserved her. And Alexander was alone, with nothing but his regrets and his memories. He had lost everything. And he had no one to blame but himself. 2 years later, Victoria stood in her Colorado estate, watching the sunrise over the mountains. She was wearing a simple white dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, her face radiant with happiness. Today was her wedding day. Marcus Thompson stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his face filled with love and pride. He had been courting her for over a year, patient and respectful, never pushing, never demanding, always supporting. Are you ready for this? He asked, his voice gentle. Victoria smiled. I've been ready for this my whole life. I just didn't know it. Their wedding was intimate, elegant, perfect. 50 of their closest friends and family members gathered in the garden of Victoria's estate. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, focused on their commitment to each other and their shared future. As they exchanged vows, Victoria thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain of Alexander's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. It had forced her to stop hiding, to stop pretending, to stop making herself smaller for someone else's comfort. I promise to celebrate your success, Marcus said, his voice strong and clear. I promise to support your dreams. I promise to be your partner in all things, equal and proud. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I promise to be myself with you, completely and authentically. I promise to share my life with you, my success and my struggles. I promise to build a future with you that's based on truth and love and respect. When they kissed, the assembled guests erupted in applause. Victoria felt a joy she had never experienced before. This was what love was supposed to feel like. This was what partnership was supposed to be. Marcus was everything Alexander hadn't been. He was successful in his own right, confident enough to celebrate Victoria's achievements without feeling threatened. He was honest, transparent, supportive. He asked about her work, her ideas, her dreams. He was proud to be seen with her, proud to be her partner. At the reception, Victoria's business partners and friends spoke about her transformation. How she had emerged from her divorce stronger, more confident, more successful than ever. How she had used her pain as fuel for her ambition. Victoria Chin is a force of nature, said Rebecca, her longtime assistant. She's built an empire that spans continents and industries. She's created jobs for thousands of people. She's changed the world. Victoria's mother stood up to speak. I'm proud of my daughter for many reasons. But mostly, I'm proud that she finally learned to be herself. She spent years hiding her light under a bushel, trying to make other people comfortable. Now she shines as brightly as she was meant to. As the evening wound down, Victoria and Marcus walked through the garden, hand in hand. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. Any regrets? Marcus asked. Victoria considered the question. I regret that I wasted so many years hiding who I was. I regret that I let fear and insecurity guide my decisions. I regret that I didn't have the courage to be myself sooner. And Alexander? Victoria looked up at the stars. I feel sorry for him. He had everything and threw it away. He had a woman who loved him enough to hide her success to protect his feelings. He had a partner who was building an empire while supporting his dreams. He had a chance at a real partnership, a real marriage, a real life. Do you think he's learned from his mistakes? I hope so. I hope he's building a new life, a better life. I hope he's learned to be honest, to value the people who love him, to make better choices. Victoria had heard through her lawyers that Alexander had been released from prison 6 months ago. He was living in a different city, working at a warehouse, trying to rebuild his life. He had honored their no-contact agreement, had made no attempt to reach out to her. I wish him well, she said simply. I wish him the kind of happiness he couldn't find with me. Marcus squeezed her hand. You're generous to say that. I'm not being generous. I'm being honest. Alexander and I were wrong for each other. We brought out the worst in each other. He made me feel like I had to hide my success, and I enabled his dishonesty and his sense of entitlement. Victoria turned to face Marcus. But you and I, we bring out the best in each other. You make me want to be braver, more ambitious, more myself. And I hope I do the same for you. You do, Marcus said, pulling her close. You inspire me every day. Your intelligence, your drive, your compassion. You make me want to be worthy of you. You already are. They kissed under the starlight, two successful people who had found each other at the right time, in the right way for the right reasons. 5 years later, Victoria Chin Thompson sat in her office, now expanded to occupy 3 floors of her building. Her empire had grown to over $50 billion. She had been named one of the most influential people in the world. Her charitable foundation had provided education and opportunities to millions of people. But more importantly, she was happy. Truly, completely happy. Marcus knocked on her office door. Ready to go home? Victoria smiled. Home was their estate in Colorado, where they lived with their 2-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. A little girl who would grow up knowing that her mother was a brilliant, successful, powerful woman. A little girl who would never have to hide her intelligence or diminish her ambitions. How was your day? Marcus asked as they walked to the elevator. Productive. We closed the renewable energy deal in Germany. The education initiative in Africa is ahead of schedule. And I got a call from the president's office about serving on the Economic Advisory Committee. And you said? I said yes, of course. Marcus grinned. My wife, the presidential advisor. Your wife, the woman who's going to change the world. You already have changed the world. Victoria thought about that as they drove home. She had changed the world, but more importantly, she had changed herself. She had learned to embrace her power, to celebrate her success, to be authentically herself. She thought about Alexander sometimes, usually when she read news stories about corporate fraud or personal betrayal. She wondered if he had learned to be honest, if he had found peace, if he had built a better life. But mostly she didn't think about him at all. Alexander Sterling was a chapter in her past, a lesson learned, a mistake that had ultimately led her to her true path. Victoria Chin Thompson was focused on the future. Her business empire, her family, her legacy. She was living the life she was meant to live, with the partner she was meant to have, as the person she was always meant to be. The revenge she had planned 5 years ago had been complete and devastating. But the real victory wasn't Alexander's downfall. The real victory was Victoria's rise. She had stopped hiding. She had stopped apologizing. She had stopped making herself smaller for anyone. And in doing so, she had become unstoppable. As they arrived home, little Elizabeth ran to greet them, her face bright with joy. Victoria picked up her daughter, thinking about the world she was creating for the next generation. A world where women could be brilliant and ambitious and successful without having to hide it. A world where partnerships were based on equality and respect. A world where love meant celebrating each other's achievements, not diminishing them. Mama, tell me a story, Elizabeth said as Victoria tucked her into bed. What kind of story? A story about a princess who saves herself. Victoria smiled. Once upon a time, there was a woman who built an empire. She was brilliant and brave and strong. And when the people who were supposed to love her tried to make her smaller, she chose to shine brighter instead. Did she live happily ever after? Victoria looked out the window at the mountains, at the empire she had built, at the life she had created through her own strength and determination. She lived authentically ever after. And that was even better than happy. As Elizabeth drifted off to sleep, Victoria reflected on her journey. The pain of betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been transformative. It had forced her to stop hiding, to embrace her power, to become who she was always meant to be. Alexander had thought he was leaving her for a better life. Instead, he had freed her to live her best life. Victoria Chin Thompson was grateful for that freedom. She was grateful for the chance to be herself, completely and unapologetically. She was grateful for the opportunity to change the world. And she was just getting started.